Yo, and welcome back to the Banter Boys podcast. My name is Sanji. With me is Fletch. How you doing, boy?
What's up, my man?
How's it going, buddy? I haven't talked to you ever. I mean, we played IGL together, but it's good to finally, put a face to that name and that banter.
Yeah, you're the first one in the fan Trax community, so it's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to it.
It is a special moment right now. Wait, so you've not even seen Jacob's face or Ollie's face?
Nope, they're just Twitter handles to me.
Well, you know what? They're a lot better than that, surely, right? But you know what? Without further ado, I think let's kick things off with the fan introduction segment. Tell us your name, your Twitter handle, which club you're representing tonight, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
That's a lot. So we'll use my nickname. I'm Fletch. Twitter handle's at FunkFletch. Not all that active, but I use it quite a bit, specifically for fan tracks. And I guess I'm active in the chats, but I don't know that I have a ton of interesting stuff to say, so I don't tweet a ton. Trying to get into it a little more, just engaging with people in my leagues, and I think I'm getting to know some people, so I enjoy it. I'm a West Ham supporter, have been close to 10 years now, I guess. Started, I guess, in 2014 when I went to London for work. I went to my first Premier League game, and it was West Ham beat Liverpool at Upton Park.
Oh, wow.
And I just kind of fell in love with the club and the environment. I mean, there's not a lot of atmospheres like that in any sort of U.S. sporting event. Of course, I'm a fan of the Mets and the Jets and the Knicks. I'm from New York originally, so we don't have a lot of those big wins to be at. But it's been a good run. They're a club that fits with my general fandom, where they tend to disappoint you at times, but somehow always give you some level of hope, which is kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you do exactly in New York?
So I live in Boston now, actually. I grew up in New York, but I work for an investment manager.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Lovely. I mean, what a first match to see the Hammers, right? And what a team to beat. But be honest, you honestly fell in love with those pretty bubbles, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to. And I hesitate to say this because I think any real West Ham fan would probably be disappointed. But the Green Street Hooligans movie was another contributing factor. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah. Well, I think I've seen bits and pieces of it. I'll need to rewatch it, honestly. But definitely, it's one of those movies that everybody kind of talks about. If you're into football, it tells the perfect story, sort of thing. That love story,
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So before we get started, I need to do the social plug because I don't know, it's a thing people do to spread the word, get those listening numbers up. So if you want to engage with us, you want to chat anything Fantrax related, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on Instagram at BanterB. We're also on Discord. Our channel number is 6585. We're also on Reddit, u/banter_boys. We post all our podcasts on anchor.fm and it distributes it to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Sometimes we post on SoundCloud, but because we are broke ass fucking people and we can't, afford to keep a lot of files up there, we kind of cycle through the SoundCloud stuff. So if you only see 3-4 episodes at a time, it's honestly just the most recent ones. I'll try to upload them on YouTube because we do have a YouTube channel, Banter Boys, as well. And maybe that'll make things easier moving forward, right? And we've got a donation page now. So if you pity us or you enjoy, us talking shit for 45 minutes to an hour, send us some money. And we just want to continue building the brand and keep making awesome fucking content for this community. All right. So this is another fan segment podcast. We have a few segments to this. We basically run general discussion where we talk about the impact of new manager and ownership. I don't know if there's too much to talk about that, but we'll definitely dive into the previous season performance, the new season expectations, old assets versus new assets, expected formation, starting 11, the impact of that 5 sub and that fucking World Cup. I mean, US is in the World Cup, so we definitely got to talk about that, right, Fletch?
Oh yeah.
But we'll obviously talk Fantrax draft advice, right? Fletch's first pick from West Ham, his next three picks, at least one hidden gem, and then jump into trading assets, right? Let's see if Fletch has any secret sauce. Does he look at form, fixtures, do 2-for-1 trades, or do 10-for-1 trades? Who the fuck knows? But anyways, let's get started. Fletch, is there anything we need to know about any new manager ownership stuff, like maybe backroom stuff? Because Moyes has been around with his boys for a little bit now.
Yeah, I think that's been pretty consistent, which frankly I think is a good thing. It feels like the first time in a while that there's some stability in that regard, and I think to build some sort of long-term success for the club, that's kind of what they need. I think they found their guy. He's sort of, he's stubborn at times maybe, but he believes in his approach, his formation, his tactics. I think he's been very selective from a transfer perspective. I think some fans would prefer that we sort of bring in all these guys that that we get linked with, but I think he's intentionally selective. I think last year it hurt us a little bit from a depth perspective with some European competition, but I actually kind of like his approach. Outside of that, I mean, the ownership piece, I haven't been around the club to know the full, long enough to know the full sort of history and why people have different views. I would say it sounded like everyone is pretty excited about the sort of minority investment from, I'm forgetting his name now, the Czech billionaire Kretinsky. And I was reading an article about it as I was getting ready to talk to you, and it sounded like there was a lot of quotes from him about building something with some sustained level of success, as opposed to trying to. I think he recognized some mistakes he had made with his club in the Czech Republic, and I think he's trying to avoid making those same mistakes here. And I guess there's rumors that long term he could become a majority owner. So it sounds like, based on what I see on Twitter, I think a lot of people would be excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any sort of changes to the backroom stuff that you think that might affect the performance of any of the players, like any maybe set piece coach or anything like that?
That's a level of depth that I don't have. I know from a player recruitment perspective, I keep reading about Rob Newman, who spent I think 12 years at Man City. As their sort of head of recruitment. And I think we've already seen that paying dividends, whether it's Skamaka coming in or, some of the players we've been linked with this year where, who knows if they come through, but just the quality of players that we're looking at and that are seemingly either close or at least considering joining us, whether it's Kostic, which sounds kind of like a long shot right now, or Onana from Lille. I think I personally am excited about, the quality of the players we're looking at now relative to a few years ago.
Oh, na. Wait, isn't that the goalkeeper?
No, he's a central midfielder.
Oh, see,
and I'm not gonna pretend I'm not gonna pretend to have watched the French league for the last a couple of years, but in the 8-minute highlight video I watched, he's like. He looks like a faster version of Declan Rice. To me, if they bring him in, that's my expectation is that's supposed to be Rice's long-term replacement because he looks very similar. He's young. I think he's 20 or 21 years old, but he kind of looks like a freak out there, which is great.
Okay, fair enough. So let's jump into club's previous season performance versus new season's expectations. So you guys finished 7th, right?
Yep.
And you also finished in the semifinals of the Conference League.
No, the Europa League.
The Europa League, right. Sorry, the actual European competition. My bad.
Well,
still an amazing run, right? But having scored 60 goals and conceded 51, how do you feel about last season's performance?
Honestly, it was a lot of fun to watch. I thought they kind of performed maybe at expectation, but it felt more disappointing because they were. I saw a stat today that I think they spent the 4th most days in the top 4 of the Premier League. Obviously, all that matters is what happens in the end. But They were up there for a bit of time. They had a couple nice stretches where they beat some of the sort of bigger clubs and had a lot of momentum. And then obviously the run in the Europa League was awesome to watch. I think they performed really well. They never looked outmatched, even in the semifinal that they lost. But I think what caught up with them was the depth. I honestly believe that if they had a couple of more quality players that Moyes felt comfortable bringing in off the bench or rotating in during those midweek European games, I honestly think they could have pulled off the Europa League or finished top 4 in the Prem. I won't say they would have done both, but it would have been really interesting to see how a little bit more depth would have helped them, because they definitely ran out of steam at the end. You could just see it. I think they focused on the Europa League, which made sense. And once they were out of that, they just looked like they were out of gas.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys had depth, but maybe not quality depth, right?
Yeah.
And even then, like, when you had opportunities to play, like, let's say your kids or whatever, I feel like Moyes didn't. Like, he just kind of, like you said, use and abuse the main squad, right? And like you said, ran out of gas. So what are you kind of expecting new season? Because the signings haven't been grand compared to the other clubs, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think there's still work to be done there, and we'll see if any of them come through. I think one of the things I've noticed is they see, and I don't know how transfers work in Europe, but it seems like we get hyper focused on one or two players, and if one of them doesn't come through, we're left scrambling, and you almost you're kind of up against the clock eventually, and you run out of time. So I've been pleased. I think thus far, I think Aguerd coming in to pair with Zuma in the back is going to be exciting. He's injured, unfortunately. I think he's due back around October. But I think that was a nice early signing, bringing back Ariela to have some depth at goalkeeper, and maybe he'll be our number one. Was important, but not all that exciting, I guess, to your point. And then I think Scamacca coming in, he's a little bit of an unknown quantity. You don't know how he's going to translate to the Premier League. I think some of us, myself included, will always be worried that he's looks like Haller out there. And I think actually think he's a great player. I've watched him play since he left West Ham, and I just don't think he fit their their tactics, their approach. But I think. If we bring in a couple of new guys, if Kostic changes his mind and decides to join us, this Onana guy, another, someone else on the left side, maybe to compete with Cresswell at the left back position, or a left wing, it suddenly on your bench, you've got Benrahma or Fornals or even Antonio or Scamacca, which just sound, and Vlasic as well. And I think that's just more of that a little bit more of that quality depth. I don't think they're far away from having quality depth. I think they just need to commit to those 2 or 3 extra signings that allows him to rotate for the Conference League, which I think they'll probably take a little bit less seriously. Maybe there will be more rotation midweek this season. But I think right now for me, the expectation based on the club as it stands is similar to last season. Hopefully pushing to get back to Europe. A couple of signings and those expectations, I think, could and should go higher.
Yeah, and I mean, have you been following preseason? Because it hasn't been looking too great towards the end, right? You guys played 7 matches in total, had 2 wins versus Servette. I'm going to butcher fucking names during this podcast, listeners, I'm sorry. But Servette, there was a 2-0 win. Ipswich, there was a 2-1 win. But then 1-1 draw to Borehamwood, 1-1 draw to Reading, a 3-1 loss to Rangers, a 1-1 draw to Luton, and then a 0-0 to Lens. Doesn't fill you with a lot of confidence moving into the new season.
No, certainly not. And I tend to maybe undervalue the preseason. I think there's, you never know what they're kind of working, whether they're working on different tactics. Moyes maybe toy. It sounds like he may be toying with the idea of going 3 at the back again, where they had some success a couple of seasons ago. I thought it actually kind of revived Cresswell's career when he was playing sort of as a left-sided center back. And then they continue to find success when they went to a back 4. But I think if, depending on who else they bring in, if Kostic comes in, he's perfect for that left wing back role if they're playing a back 3. So, we'll see. but I don't put too much. I don't put too much emphasis on the preseason. We'll see. You know, they've got a tough start coming up on Sunday with Manchester City.
For sure. All right. I mean, let's talk about those new signings, right? You keep talking about Kostic. Let's talk about maybe players that have been confirmed, right? I don't think we can go as far back to January 2022. You guys didn't really have anyone that came in. Few people that went out, but I don't think it's anyone Fantrax worthy. So moving straight up to like current summer, the people that left, right? Maybe we can touch on whether or not it's a massive loss or not, and then focus more on the ins, right? So with the outs, Ryan Fredericks, I think he's at Bournemouth now, right?
Yeah.
You think you're gonna miss that level of depth, or?
No, I think I thought he was a quality, relative, pretty good player. But he's one that's, to me, kind of easily replaceable. I think Ben Johnson sort of covers sort of provides cover on both the left and the right back.
All right. What about David Martin, the guy that famously kept the clean sheet against us? I think it was his only game or something like that.
Yeah, that was a big day at the Fletch House.
What about Mark Noble, legend, absolute fucking legend?
Yeah. I mean, you can't replace a guy like that from a leadership perspective. I think we're lucky to have Declan Rice stepping into that captain role, who to this point has done everything right as a West Ham player. I think he's I think he's one of the best players in the Premier League, and I think he's off to bigger and better things at some point. So we should kind of enjoy him while we've got him. But I think I think Noble's presence over the last couple of years with a team that has stayed pretty consistent has sort of provided a foundation. So hopefully his presence, even though he's not there, kind of lingers on from a pure leadership and camaraderie perspective. Because the team, they've become really fun to watch and really easy to root for. I mean, as a fan, you always kind of root for them, but it's a good group of guys that seem like they're all really committed to trying to push to the next level, which is what we all want to see.
Yeah, for sure. Now this is a bit of given current world situation, this one is a bit of a pull on the heartstrings name, Yarmolenko, right?
Yeah.
Even when he scored, when the country was in turmoil, I mean, it was definitely not just for West Ham, but I think a heartwarming moment for all football fans. When he got that goal, you saw the relief on his face and all that. You want to talk about maybe him leaving the club?
Yeah, I just got goosebumps when you reminded me of those. It was really
Same,
two
bro,
goals,
same.
one in the Europa League
Yeah.
and one in against Villa there. I mean, look, he never quite worked out. I think the way that we all hoped, and obviously that he would have hoped. I think he's a really talented player. I think similar to Haller, maybe just didn't sort of fit within Moyes' system as well as others, and in some ways maybe never really got a fair shake. A fair shot to prove himself. I think Antonio kind of became that striker for us, and Moyes obviously values his work rate, and I think he does do, even if he's not scoring goals, I think he provides a lot of value. And so it's tough for Yarmo to find minutes, but when he did seem to make the most of them. I mean, he scored in the COVID season, he scored that winner against Chelsea, which was big and sort of not necessarily keeping us up, but I think making the end of the season a little more comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely gonna miss a player of his quality, man. All right. Sonny Perkins, I don't know who the fuck that is. I'm gonna move on. But Arthur Masuaku, bit of a cult hero. I mean, he scored that crazy goal against us as well, right?
Yeah, and thoughts and prayers to King Arthur FC there.
Yeah, listen, you were supposed to be here for the pod. You stopped responding. Fletch had to step in. Sorry, not sorry. I love you, but
Sorry, listeners, you're stuck with me instead of the legend King Arthur himself. He's like I think you said it well. He's a cult fan favorite. He's a talented guy, talented player. If I read something the other day, it's like if you just watched his highlight clips, you would think he's one of the best wingers in the world, because he put together some moves out there on the left wing that not a lot of other guys can pull off. I think it was the consistency and the defensive piece of it that sort of made him expendable in Moyes' mind. But we're all going to miss him for sure because he was fun when he was out there, and yeah, similar to Craig Dawson, I guess had that cult following.
Yeah, for sure. So now let's kind of talk about the ins. So you can, if they're not a Fantrax asset, say a quick note and we can move on to the ones worth talking about, right? Naif Aguerd from Rennes. He's obviously a big signing, right?
I think he's a big signing from a sort of reality perspective, from a fantasy perspective. He's a center back. I think he'll get some aerials. I think he's a quality player, so I think it's a big boost to the back line. But I think of him similar to the way I think of Kurt Zouma, who's a streamable center back that'll get the odd goal here and there from a set piece, but not someone I'm looking to draft.
Okay, really? You don't think he's gonna start away, be a big impact? Because like the likes of Soufal and Cresswell kind of dropped off as Fantrax assets last season.
They did, and let's not get ahead of ourselves. I think they're sort of bounce back candidates, but I don't know. I just think within our system, those center backs don't produce a ton as many ghost points as you'd hope, or as would enough to make them rosterable. He's also injured. I think he's due back sort of late. It sounds like late October at best, maybe through the World Cup, which is disappointing because I think he was a key signing. But luckily we got Craig Dawson back there to get us to that point, and Ogbonna coming back will be big. But yeah, he's someone that I'll look to monitor when he does come back. See what his performances look like, and someone that might be worth picking up, certainly as a streamer when they've got an easy matchup, but not someone I'm looking to draft.
Okay, interesting. Now Alfonso Ariela. I think it's a fantastic signing, like in the fact that he's permanent now, right? But do you think he's maybe going to replace Fabianski?
I don't know. That one to me is really a toss-up. And I'd be happy with either. I think Fabianski still has another good year or two in him. Areola, I think, is definitely the goalkeeper of the future. It's just, the jury's still out to see if the future starts now or next season.
Yeah, fair enough. Now Patrick Kelly.
He's a young kid from Northern Ireland, I believe. One for the future, but no one to consider this year.
Okay, all right. What about Flynn Downs?
Similar, I think. Defensive central midfielder, younger player. Seems like he's got a lot of potential. Maybe depending on what happens with Onana, but another potential candidate to replace Rice in that sort of central defensive midfield role. But again, one for the future as well. Okay.
Now let's end on the big name, and big because he's 6'5", I think. Gianluca Scamacca. What a name! Yeah,
that was an exciting one. I think fans were kind of split on him versus Broja from you boys, but I think I'm excited about him, especially because it seems like Moyes is, he was one of Moyes' targets. So I think, when he identifies someone that he think fits within his system, I personally get excited because I think when he's had the opportunity to sign players like that he believes in and thinks fit the system, it has shown to work out pretty well. I think it's going to take some time for him to, get used to the Premier League. But, I think with Cresswell whipping balls in and Bowen, he's a big target in the middle. So right off the bat, he could bag some goals that way. And then he seems like a talented guy as well. And so hopefully can create and finish some of those chances that Antonio famously misses from time to time.
So it seems like he's not quite ready to start the season, but once he gets going, it sounds like he's going to be nailed then.
That would be my guess.
Okay.
I think Antonio can. I think people are forgetting too. When you think about from a Fantrax perspective, people are forgetting that Antonio is not a striker. He's been playing that role, but he's played right wing back for us.
He's a right back,
and I think he'd be valuable on the wing, or even just almost playing as kind of a number 10 in behind Scamacca. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't think Antonio's value takes that much of a hit, depending on where you think he should be drafted this year. I don't think it takes as much of a hit as people think with Scamacca coming in, and I also don't think that it's one or the other. I don't think they're just going to rotate, at the striker position. I think Antonio is going to get minutes elsewhere, assuming he stays healthy.
All right. So that kind of rounds off that list. Let's now move into expected formation and starting 11. How do you think you guys are going to shape up, and who's going to be on that pitch moving forward?
I think, given Aguerd's injury, I think we're probably going to basically be rolling out the same sort of formation we did last year with the 4 at the back, with Rice and Socek in at sort of the central defensive midfield positions. Bowen's kind of nailed on the right wing. Fornals seems favored on the left wing with Antonio up top, and then either Benrahma, Lanzini, sometimes Fornals in behind in the number 10 role. But I think there is some flexibility up there, especially now with Scamacca. So I think initially we'll see a pretty similar formation to what we saw last year, and frankly, a similar starting 11. But I think there's a little more room for flexibility. And then when Aguerd comes back, again, I think they've tested it a bit in the preseason, going to a 3 at the back, which I think Moyes has had success with them with that formation in the past. And I think depending on who they bring in on the left side, if it's Cornet from Burnley or Kostic, that could be a really effective formation for them, both in terms of sort of shoring up the defensive side and then also adding some attacking creativity.
So who you worried about then, based on last season and stuff? Who do you think gets affected the most in terms of taking a Fantrax value hit in that sense?
Unfortunately, it's probably Benrahma. I think he's sort of the first to miss. He always seemed like the first to miss out. And I think that's sort of further confirmed. I think he's a really talented player. He's fun to watch, adds a little bit of flair. I think his issue, if he could figure out and get a little more clinical in the final third, I think he could be a fantastic player for us on the left wing or even in that number 10 role. But he just hasn't put it all together yet. And same with Vlasic. I think everyone, guys always seem to take, either a half season or a full season to sort of figure out Moyes and his approach and sort of fit into the system. So I think I'm kind of hopeful that he figures it out a little bit this year and provides more of that quality depth that we were talking about. But I think with Scamacca coming in and potentially another sort of left-sided wing player, I think Benrahma is the one that loses the most minutes, and he becomes one of those guys that comes in off the bench pretty consistently, but it just makes rostering him in Fantrax a little more difficult.
Do you think Scamacca could be like the West Ham's Benteke this season potentially? I mean, not because he's fucking tall, but I mean, I assume that would be one of his main routes to points, right?
Yeah, I think initially that's where he's going to find him. And the hope is that he becomes a more sort of well-rounded attacker for us. And it seems like from what I've seen and read, it sounds like he's got that in his locker. He just got to, find some consistency, and it would be really nice to have, a real striker that, puts up 15, 20 goals a season for us.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's now talk about impact of 5 subs and World Cup. With the 5 subs, do you think Moyes is going to rotate his boys? I'm going to make that fucking rhyme all podcast, by the way.
I think of all the clubs in the Premier League, the 5 subs probably has the least amount of impact on West Ham, given that Moyes seems to go weeks without remembering that he's allowed to make subs. So we'll see. I honestly don't think it'll change much. I think most of us are probably going to forget that we have the 5 subs as an option outside of those matches when we're up by a lot or down by a lot.
Okay, interesting. And the World Cup, which of your boys gone to the World Cup?
So Rice is the obvious one.
Yeah.
I think he's young enough and fit enough that I wouldn't worry too much about an impact on him long term from a sort of Fantrax or West Ham season perspective. Bowen's obviously hopeful of getting the call for England. It'd be great to see. It was great to see him get the call up for some of the friendlies or whatever the competition was earlier in the summer or at the end of the season. Those are the two big ones. I think, I don't know where Lanzini stands with Argentina. Italy, obviously, unfortunately, isn't in the World Cup, but I think that's helpful. It gives Scamacca, a break, as he starts to get used to the Premier League, just an opportunity to reset depending on how things go in the first half. And I think, frankly, the World Cup benefits us in some ways. I think Antonio, getting a month off, to sort of have another preseason will be helpful depending on, I think he avoided injury last year, but anytime these guys get off to sort of recover is certainly helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before we move on to the next segment, America in the World Cup, you must be buzzing, right? And even better, playing England. So I know the bands are going to be flying between you and Jacob.
Yeah, it's good to be back. And I'm excited I'm excited. Last time, I mean, we weren't in it in 2018 and in 2014, I wasn't involved in Fantrax and didn't have sort of that global community of football fans to sort of banter with. But yeah, it'll be fun. I think the game against England, I want to say, is that the one that's the day after Thanksgiving here in the States. So it's going to be, and they're all of the U.S. matches in the group stage, I think, are at 2 p.m. our time. So they're going to be well watched. I think people get excited despite the country not being that into football. Relative to Europe and South America, I think when the World Cup comes around, people do get excited. So it'll be fun.
So, do you not think, like, with Pulisic moving to Chelsea and now Mitch Marsh, is that the Leeds coach name?
Jesse
I butchered
Marsh.
that, did I? Jesse Marsh. I don't
Yeah.
know why I said Mitch Marsh. Who the hell is Mitch Marsh? I don't know. Maybe it's a guy that I know here. Anyways, Jesse, right? With Jesse moving to the EPL, do you not think with that added exposure and attention or connection to the US, is that not going to maybe spark a bit more interest?
I think it's started. It's just been slow. I mean, I think there's just so many different sports here that people have to choose from that are kind of ingrained in the culture and sort of just everyday living. I think the MLS, the quality of the MLS, kind of hurts the case for it to grow. I know that there's a ton of Premier League fans. And I think for us, it being on Saturday, Sunday morning is awesome. It kind of leads into the NFL, so you got some really great weekends watching the Prem in the morning and then the NFL in the afternoon. I don't know that it'll ever catch on the way that it has in Europe, to be honest with you. Just based on the NFL is king right now here, and we'll I don't see that changing. Baseball, I think, has kind of lost its way a little bit in terms of bringing in sort of newer and younger fans. So there's a little bit of an opportunity there. And I think, again, there are a lot of, people are really into the Premier League here, and some of the other, La Liga and some of the other European leagues and certainly the sort of World Cup and other European competitions. But it's just, it's not appointment television the way that some of the other sports are when the U.S. is playing. Outside of the World Cup is the exception. I think the bars are packed. A lot of flags and scarves walking around. So it gets exciting. It's just not. I was in London for the semifinals of the last World Cup, and I've never seen anything. I've never seen anything like that here. I think even when the bars are packed, there's just a different. It's just a there's just the
vibe is different.
Yeah. It's there's an electricity there.
For sure. Well, I mean, you just have to move to the UK, right? Because I'm sure getting up early for games isn't easy either.
Yeah, well, my dog wakes me up right on time to check the lineups for the seven
That's perfect.
for the noon kickoff. Yeah, he makes sure that I check to see who's in the lineup.
Oh, gotta get that dog some extra doggy treats, man. All right, let's move on to now the fan favorite segment, the draft portion, right? This is gonna be an interesting one because I don't think this is as obvious as for some of the other clubs. But who's the first pick from West Ham?
To me, it's still relatively obvious with Bowen.
Okay,
I think people are worried about a little bit of a drop off from last year. I think he outperformed his sort of expected assists by a decent margin, and so I think people are expecting some regression. And he doesn't put up the ghost points that you'd want out of. I think last year he finished among the top 10 players in total fantasy points, but he certainly doesn't put up the ghost points you would want from a first round pick. And frankly, I'm on the fence even in the second round. There's kind of a no man's land in the second round this year, I think, where if he fell to me, I would probably take him. But he's not one of those early second rounders, when you're looking at guys that might fall out of the first round, like a Madison or Bruno or Sterling or Jesus. So to me, he's a really great pick at a late second round spot. And I do think I think he's gonna produce a similar number of goals. I think the assists will come, and frankly, some of those sort of fantasy assists are the result of the work that he's doing out on the wing when he gets into the box and gets fouled. So I think to an extent it's repeatable, just maybe not. Maybe not. I think he was at 13.5 points per start last year.
Yeah. Well, depends on the scoring that you use. I think 12.5 is what I'm seeing, sitting 7th overall, but that's because like Mane has left, right? I don't know if there's any other player that would have left. I mean, I should be better at this given that we're fucking pod about this shit all the time, but yeah, like top 10 like you said, right? So still the quality is there.
Yeah. So to me, like a sure thing late second round pick for me. Middle of second round, it depends who's there.
Okay, well, maybe the first pick was obvious, but surely the next three are a bit harder, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what your view is on the impact of Scamacca coming in on Antonio. To me, I think I took Antonio the other day in the 4th or 5th round. I think it was the 5th round, and I felt really good about it at that spot, just because the upside is still there, and I also, as I said earlier, I think there's a spot for him in the lineup, whether he's starting at striker or not. I think he can put up points. I mean, I think about that stretch that he and Arnautovic had a couple of years ago, where he was kind of playing on the wing to an extent, or even two up top. So I think he's going to return that value if you get him in the fifth round this year, would be my guess. Again, that's assuming he stays healthy. And I think the other thing that Scamacca provides is the ability to rotate Antonio out and let him rest from time to time. So hopefully he's able to, start 30 to 32 matches for us. And in the 5th round, that's a guy that I would target for sure.
Okay. Who's your next out of the 3?
So this is where it gets a little tricky. My hope is that it's Scamacca that is either the 2nd or 3rd, highest sort of point getter at the end of the season, or 3rd most valuable anyway. I think Souček could see a little bit of a bounce back if he adds even just a couple of goals back from the previous season. I think his stats would look much better. I think Rice took on a little bit more of an attacking role last year relative to the year prior, which is why Souček kind of underperformed. But I think he was one of the guys that just looked. I don't know how many matches he started last year, but outside of I think a red card suspension, he started almost every Premier League match, and he was just dead at the end of the year. So to the extent that Downs can step in and spell him a couple of weeks, or even in the midweek if Onana comes in, even better. But I think he could be in for a little bit of a bounce back, and then it starts to depend on your roster construction too. Like Declan Rice is I think he had 8+ pretty consistent in that sort of 8+ points per start last year. Obviously, a guy that is the most nailed on player on the team. But it really depends on how the rest of your. I think you need to have a number of high upside guys that can win you weeks if you're, and he provides some stability that can be valuable. But it really depends on how you build your team.
Okay, and the final of the three.
I feel like I've talked about 6, but I if I had to guess for the end of the year, I'd say Bowen, Antonio, Scamacca in that order in terms of total points. Then Souček and Rice kind of tied in behind them. And then after that, you're probably hoping for a bounce back from you got Fornal. I describe Fornal as, I guess, similar to Rice in depending on your roster, a guy that's going to consistently get you, 8 to 10 points. And if that excites you, or if that sort of provides that stability in your lineup, then he could be worth rostering. And then past that, you're kind of hoping for, and maybe this is getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit from a hidden gem perspective, but I think Cresswell or Sofal, if not both, are definitely due for a rebound. Sofal, I think, was more injured last year than people realized, and Cresswell, if he can, get Souček on the end of some of those set pieces, and Zuma and Aguerd when he comes back, and obviously Scamacca, those assist numbers could go up again, and he could be a value pick in the sort of later rounds.
Yeah. Okay. So now with the assets that you've mentioned, can you quickly run through which rounds you'd kind of grab these guys at, or what you'd recommend maybe?
Yeah. So I think Bowen, for me, I start to think about in the middle of the second round. I would jump on him in the late second, and if somehow he falls to the third, it'd be a no-brainer for me. Antonio, it's a tough one because I don't know for sure how things, what the formation is going to look like, how much he's going to be rotated with Scamacca. It kind of depends on how Scamacca fits in and how quickly he gets up to speed. But he's a start to be a consideration in the fourth. I took him in the fifth, which I felt good about given the other options at the time. Souček is probably more of a 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th round player for me. And then the rest are kind of in that, again, it starts to depend on roster construction. If I wanted a guy with higher upside, I'd be maybe going a little early on Cresswell or Sofal in the 10th, 11th, 12th round. If I wanted that stability, I take a Rice. Those guys tend to go earlier than I would draft them. So they haven't been on many of my rosters yet this year.
Okay. All right. Now, I know you've talked a lot about a lot of assets, right? But do you have any hidden gems up your sleeve?
If Kostic comes in.
Yeah. So kind of keep an eye on that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. I think, I mean, the starting 11 as it stands right now is so predictable that I don't know that there's not a guy that's been, I mean, Vlasic, I guess, would be the potential true hidden gem. If you see him come off the bench in the first couple of game weeks and puts up an assist or bags a goal or puts up some ghost points in a 20-minute cameo, and it seems like he might get a shout in that number 10 role or even out on the left wing, I might pick him up just because I do think they're going to have a relatively potent attack this year, similar to last year, maybe slightly better. So I want pieces of that when they're nailed on starters, and if he starts to trend that way, that could be the hidden gem. Yeah.
Okay. Good shout. Any other players, or should we move on to the final segment then?
I think that covers the guys I expect to be there.
All right. So, trading assets. Fletch, do you look at form? Do you look at fixtures? Do you look for 2-for-1 trades? Do you talk to Jacob? What's your secret sauce?
Right now, my secret is pretty much trying to figure out who in my league, who each other guy in my league supports, and figuring out a way to maybe get a little more value out of a player on a team that they support. The other thing I've been doing that I've been noticing, I haven't pulled off a trade yet, is that, there's guys like, and it kind of changed with the news today of Cucurella going to Chelsea, but like, and you know more than me about Marcos Alonso's status, but if you can grab him in the 16th round, essentially, and Chilwell gets hurt or he's not quite ready to start every week, you've got a 12 point per start, 13 point per start player in Alonso. So I found myself picking them up to see what happens in the first week or two, and if and I guess the hope is that the player that has Chilwell gets nervous and might want to trade for Alonso for something that that can be key for your lineup. I'm trying to think of others. Malacia, I don't know how to pronounce it. The
United guy,
left back for United. Yeah, he's another one that I've been thinking about from that perspective. So just seeing when those other guys go. So after Luke Shaw gets picked, inevitably kind of late, I'll pick up Malacia and then try to throw a trade out there. But it's always tough to trade after the draft because you're like you get excited. You drafted the guys for a reason, so you're not necessarily looking to trade them out. And I can talk myself into anyone on my lineup being the next Mo Salah. So.
All right. Before we sign off, what's the best trade you've done or worst trade?
The worst trade I've done was, I forget who I even got back, but that's telling. I traded Rafinha last year after, did I trade him to Jacob?
I think you did. Is it you that I'm supposed to be pissed at? Because Jacob had way too many good trades, man.
I was one of them. I think I traded. Actually, you know what? It wasn't that. I think I traded him for Mahrez and Souček.
Okay.
So if Souček had a better season, it would have worked out. But I gave up on him way too early. That was a big mistake. I can tell you about the most talked about trade in our home league was 2 seasons ago. We had a guy trade De Bruyne for Pedro Neto and Trossard. And keep it. So this was before Neto got injured, and there was a lot of talk of kicking people out of the league, of vetoing it. It was very it was a very contentious.
Yeah.
The group chat was firing 24/7, and in hindsight, it wasn't that terrible because remember Neto had a great season that year.
Yeah.
But it was. On paper, it was insane, and it created quite the controversy in the league. I wasn't involved.
Fair enough. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we had planned to talk about. That's everything for the pod. Fletch, it's been awesome to finally catch up, man. Talk to you in person, I know you were a little shy, you were a little nervous about this recording, but you fucking smashed it, bro.
Yeah,
we'll
sure see.
You're gonna get raving reviews from both Ollie, Jacob, and even the fucking community. Honestly, it's been a pleasure. Do you have anything you want to kind of sign off, final words for managers that are playing Fantrax for the first time, or even experienced ones?
Talk to more of your friends that play OFPL and convert them to Fantrax because it's a much better scoring system, and you don't spend all your time trying to predict lineups before 3 days before a match is about to happen. It's great for active managers. It's a good community. I was saying this the other day in one of the group chats. Like it's just there's not a lot of negativity. I think people give each other a hard time, but it's all in good fun. There's a lot of good banter, a lot of, I've met a lot of good people, even just on Twitter, and hope to meet them in person. Hopefully one day I'll get over to London and we can go to a match together.
100%.
We'll get Jake Benali involved and have a few pints.
Man, my brother-in-law is a West Ham fan. His dad's a West Ham fan. So West Ham has a special place in my heart. So I would definitely be down for that game. We should definitely do it.
Yeah, we'll have to look at the schedule.
All right, let's do it.
You work on the tickets, my friend.
I will.
Use some of that money that everyone's going to donate after this episode.
And just buy you the tickets. Yeah, that sounds perfect.
That's what it's for, right?
Exactly. To fund Fletcher's fantasy. There was another F word that I had here. Shit, I should have worked on this. Anyways, Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I think our next episode is going to be Leeds. We're almost there. We've almost got all our 20. I think we still got 2 more after this. We're doing our best to get them, but it's hard. It's a little tough, but hopefully we get everything out before the season starts. Good luck with your drafts. If you need any help, you need any advice, hit us up. If you have West Ham questions, hit Fletch up, right? He clearly knows what the fuck he's talking about. So, yeah, Fletch, I will hit you up when I do. Until then, peace.